and we talked quite a bit on the phone, and you'd been calling me, and I had been complaining about my job. We had started as a small blood center, and we eventually started buying Red Cross centers all through Arkansas and Texas, northern Texas. And I was not allowed to increase my staff. And so I was whining about my brother, and he said, you know, I kind of heard this same kind of whining from Ruthie, his wife. And he said, you two should get together, and you should start a business. I go, what? I said, I've never started a business before. So that took us on a path, and we started looking for businesses. And between Ruthie and I, we both have fed the birds every kind of life. Although Ruthie has been all over the United States. Sorry, thank you. And but we decided, I found something on the internet about Wild Birds Unlimited franchises. And I said, hey, what do you think about this? So we looked at it, and I will tell you, for anybody who is looking, and families around the United States looking for a franchise, they are a fantastic franchise. We had to work with them for 6 months to a year to actually prepare ourselves to become owners, taking us through all the different steps. But that's not what I'm here for today. What I'm here today for is to talk to you about something maybe each of us can do in our own backyards to help the avian life that we have all around us. Turn this on here. Did any of you see this article in the New York Times in September? Where it was Carl Zimmer who said birds are vanishing in North America. We had a little preempt to that through Wildlife, through Wild Birds Unlimited. They sent us an email and said, hey, this is coming out. So you need to prepare yourselves. Those people who had stores at that time, we weren't open. But when I read the article, I was astounded. And basically, it's an article based on a journal article that was sent to Science Journal, and it was published in October of the next month. And basically, and it's concerning data that all these different agencies have sent, and they collaborated on it with Cornell, United States Geological Survey, all of those. They had data and they looked back from the 70s. The major points are about 532 bird species were looked at. And what they found was almost 3 billion birds have been lost since the 70s. Some of the bird populations actually did increase. We'll talk about that just for a few minutes. But continent-wide, they looked also at the 10 last springtime migrating years. They used radar. They used 143 stations throughout the United States and Canada. And what they found was just within the last 10 years of migrating, there's been a 14% drop. And that actually correlated with bird watchers who will call in their numbers of what birds they're seeing. It correlated exactly with that, with a 14% drop, which is really frightening. The other frightening thing is it's not happening just in the United States, not just on our continent, but also in Europe. They're seeing the same sort of numbers declining in birds. So the good news, those that were up were raptors, turkeys, gnatcatchers, vireos, and waterfowl. Waterfowl were up the most by 56%. Can anybody guess? The paper didn't really state what it was. Can anybody guess?
Ducks Unlimited.
That's exactly what I was thinking when I read it, because I used to volunteer in Kansas City at their art shows. And so that they have set aside wetlands for all the waterfowl. So those were the ones who saw the most increase. We aren't doing that for any of our other birds on a basis as consistent as they have done. But what it does show, I will say, with Ducks Unlimited, is that it can be done, right? Because a lot of those populations were down. And Ducks Unlimited, I believe, started in the 30s. So they've been working on this for many, many years. So some of the losses were in some common shorebirds. Some shorebirds, like there's a green heron up there. Robins were down quite a bit. And if you look at some of these birds, and if you think back to your childhood or years ago, you're going to say, I used to see a lot more of these, and now you don't see them as much. So even warblers, finches. Now, when I saw starlings, it's a European starling, right? It was introduced in 1890 in New York. They released, I think it was 100 200 of them. They spread all across the United States in a very short period of time. They're considered an invasive species. I say that. But their loss is 49% since the 70s. 49%. And at first I thought, I don't know that I'm, this sounds bad from a bird person, but I don't know that I'm that upset about the starlings dropping by, almost 50%. But then it dawned on me, if the starlings have dropped that much, what in the world is happening to our native population of birds? Does anybody feel that way? Does anybody think I used to see a lot more of this than I do now? I know one of mine, growing up in the Midwest, we always saw meadowlarks. And I remember thinking the last few years, I was with my brothers there for a family event, and we were driving in Nebraska. And I remember thinking, looking out the window, I thought, I don't see any meadowlarks. It was hard to find any. And they're very distinctive along the, in the farm areas. So what's caused the bird loss? Habitat loss is going to be number one. And that doesn't come as a surprise, does it? But the second one that was talked about is toxic pesticide use, both in the breeding and wintering areas of the birds. And this also is going to cause decline in insect diversity as well. And many of our birds, even though they come to our feeders, many of them are insect eaters as well. And that is what they feed their young. So if you don't have the insects in feeding their young, they're not going to be able to raise as many young. Now the last one was agriculture intensification. I saw that and I thought, what does that mean? So I looked it up. So here it was, involves increased use of fertilizers, plant growth regulators, pesticides, and mechanized agriculture. And I continued reading about it because I don't know a lot about farrowing and things like that. But what I did understand was they are trying to get the most crop out of a piece of land. And what I saw was, when I was reading this, they have a very narrow view. It's only what you can do with that. It doesn't matter possibly what the effects are on anything else. At least that was my take on it. So what can you and I do to help? There's some basic, simple things we can do simply in our own backyard that would help with birds. And one is creating a certified wildlife habitat. Wild Birds Unlimited is championing with the National Wildlife Federation a program that the Federation has had for years, actually. But now we're getting involved, and we want to tell other people about it. So it's to create a certified wildlife habitat program in your backyard to become certified. It's $20 application fee on that side. It's on the National Wildlife Federation site. And you get a certificate. This is if you qualify. So we'll ask you all these questions. You have this, this, and this, and we'll go through all of that real quickly. Or $50 for a certificate, and go on. Whether you want a plaque or whatever you want. So there's 5 components of that. So you have food, cover, places to raise young, and sustainable practices. So the first one being food. Now, I own a store that sells food, right? But I will tell you, the first thing I will tell you is do native species. You can come to my store and buy some supplemental food for the birds, but native species are so important with the berries and the seeds that they supply. And when I'm doing my reading, native species comes up constantly, over and over, for everything. This is one of my favorite native species. It's beautyberry. And I know it grows here as well. I know I had it in Oklahoma and Kansas. And then there's a few sites. Does anybody here belong to the South Carolina Native Plant Society? Oh, we gotta get some people involved. Okay, so then the other way to supplement is by feeders. So you can use seed, you can use suet, or you can use nectar. And that nectar time is coming up pretty soon, and with our warm weather that we've had, I'm wondering if those hummers are going to be around here sooner. So you need a water source in your yard. Now some people may go, oh, I have a marsh. Well, that's a water source, you just need one. But it can be as simple as a shallow dish of water. It doesn't need to be anything huge, just something that the birds would be able to bathe in and drink from. The other thing you need is cover. So there's different types of cover. You know, we have these torrential rains that come here. I thought it was bad in the Midwest, good Lord. It's really bad here. And then we have the searing heat that happens in August. So the birds need cover. And there's different ways that you can work on that, whether it's evergreens, ground cover, dead trees. Dead trees are important. I know you don't want dead trees falling on any of the houses or anything, but if you can chop it off at a certain level, if you can, and keep it there, woodpeckers and all the other kinds of birds would use it. I had a tree in my yard and it was dying, obviously, so I had to cut it off at a certain level and kept the branches. And we have a spreadable suet called bark butter, and I use it on that all the time. I just spread it on the bark and see who comes to get it. I have warblers and all other kinds of birds come. But you can also use roosting boxes or nest boxes. So the birds that will use those type of boxes are chickadees, titmice, bluebirds, and wrens. And it's also a good idea to include bats, because bats are voracious eaters of insects, right? So it'd be wonderful to have in the yard. And again, if you raise young, whether it's in a nest box or whether it's in native trees or bushes, they're all great options. As far as timing and putting up nest boxes, we always have people asking, when should I put those up? Winter is the best time. I know it sounds odd, but most of these bird species stay here. I'm guessing you probably have all of these in your yard right now, right? And they're looking for places to roost at night to keep warm. So they will all be inside roosting boxes, keeping warm at night, and many times they'll use those roosting boxes as nest boxes as well. I like this quote. It was written by Cynthia Berger. I thought I'd hate being a landlord, but my tenants are great. They're pleasant to have around, they have strong family values, and I like to hear their music. Now I'm thinking of acquiring more units. Then there's sustainability practices. With soil and water, you would have mulch, you would use drip irrigation, you would use composting to improve the soil, or worm farms. And then there's some invasive and exotic species, and again, we're talking about plants again here. So if it's invasive, maybe take it out, replace it with native species, or use more native species as you're planting. And then there's organic practices that can be used. Now, one of the organic practices, where I think of organic, is please keep cats indoors. And I know that's something, I'm a cat owner, I always have been. But I will tell you, one of the first cats I had, a friend gave to me. And I thought, this cat's well fed. She's not going to be doing anything when she goes outside. Well, because I always got birds. And this was probably 30 years ago at least. Until I got my first downy woodpecker at my back door. And I thought, no, you're going to become an indoor cat. So from then on, she was indoor and my other cats had been as well. So please think about doing that, because that is one of the second highest, besides habitat, the second highest killer of birds are cats. And even though they're well fed, it is just in there, that's innate, that they are going to go after the birds. Okay, organic practices. Look at eliminating or significantly reducing your use of chemicals, whether it's herbicides, pesticides. Or if you do use it, look for the most targeted one, so it will only kill that type of plant, not a broad one that will kill off everything, and something that breaks down quickly in the environment. And the last is always follow the labels. And there's more information on the National Wildlife Federation site regarding that. And the other thing is encourage some of those, the ladybugs, the dragonflies, the praying mantis, all of those will help to take care of your pests. When we put pesticides out that kill everything, it destroys all of them. We want to keep the good guys here. So if each of us did our part in helping birds and wildlife in our own yards, just think of the effect that we can all make on our environment. Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Yes.
You mentioned toxic pesticides. Have been pesticides. I thought that might have already been done. We got an DDT.
Well, and we found that with the eagles, right? And that was one of those stories that was great. When we see raptors are increased, that's eagles. But the other thing I was reading about, and I don't remember the type of pesticide, there was a type of pesticide that is actually used in some of the breeding areas. It's like neo blah, 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 blah. And what it does actually with some of the warblers and what they think some of them were lost by is they can't gain weight. They are unable to gain weight with being exposed to certain pesticides. It doesn't kill them, but they can't gain weight, so they can't make that long journey wherever they're going to come back. So there's just a lot more research that needs to be done on how it affects. Good question. Yes?
Position of these pesticides real harmful to people, organophosphates, real life problems, especially in infants. But permafense, if we replace them with, are showing a much higher cardiovascular risk. That people with the highest level, highest third, have a much higher risk of dying of a heart attack than those with the lowest third. This is a lot of what we're spraying. So I don't know. I mean, I don't like mosquitoes either, but be careful.
I live in Kalawasi, and I don't know, I was there a while, but maybe like 8 years ago or something, they did a thing where they tried to become an area that did this, and so we all participated, and we all set up our little areas, and we got a little sign. Has that campaign carried over to other gated communities in the region? Or are you aware of that? Or?
I am not aware of that, but that doesn't mean it isn't.
It was like a campaign, and I think they even threw in a little money to encourage people to do it, and for a while we were the first in South Carolina that had a certain percentage of homes that had set this up. So it's kind of a cool way to organize by gated community or the area where you live, and we all have a little signs. It's very cute. So anyway, just an idea.
Great. Oh yes, here we go.
Is there a native plant that you would recommend that would be deer resistant?
You know, society garlic always comes up. Society garlic always comes up. And you got to remember, I'm new to the region, but we did have a talk at our grand opening. Laura Lee Rose of Master Gardeners came and talked, and society garlic came up several times during the conversation. She is a wealth of information, and even on the South Carolina site in Clemson, as a lot of that. But society garlic came up a lot of times, I will tell you that. That some people said if they put society garlic around things, the deer didn't enter, they didn't pass over it. So think about that.
The last few years I've noticed, or not noticed, blue jays, they just disappeared. Do you know anything about them?
I do not. Now, out where I'm at, I haven't. But a lot of the customers that come in the store say that, and I have, do you have an answer for that?
West Nile virus
Oh.
was responsible for blue jays dying off, and they are slowly making a comeback now.
Okay. Oh, wow. Was that just a few years ago? Okay. I feel the same way, yeah. Because, you know, as kids, you go out in the evening and you'd see all those fireflies on them, or no, I noticed that too. I think it's along the same lines of things. Yeah. Bees, yeah.
Eat worms with pesticides where they can easily harvest on lawns. You kill the worms, fireflies die.
And worms are so important, aren't they? Even in the soil and aerating it, and yes, very important, yes.
Have you heard of Bee City?
No.
Program about Bee City. It's very entertaining. It doesn't have much corner, and it will be worth it.
Oh, wonderful.
Repeat that, please.
Bee City. Bee City, she said it's by Knox Corner.
We had a program on Bee City. Where is it, Linda? Knox Corner?
On the edge, on the other sidewalk.
Oh, okay. Oh. So if we do a search, hopefully we look that up on the internet.
Yes. A few years ago, I was involved in some of the bird watching stuff with, to where we would ban birds, and that was with the Audubon Society. They would do it every January, in fact, and I think in different parts of the country. The other comment I had, as far as birds being, not the migratory birds especially, there was some indication that they were running into towers, the radio towers, and all the excess cell towers we've had has been blamed for the death of some birds.
That's true, that's very true. And there are, even with the large cities, when we have migrating birds now, some of the cities are actually taking it on to lower lights, to dim lights and everything, dimmer, because it actually throws the birds off course as well, but then they'll